wants us off the stage.
Okay.
Here.
Oh, yeah, I'm
They're
from
scooching
Detroit.
us.
They're what?
Oh, this way. Okay.
Going over there.
Oh, I think they told me that we had to sit in assigned
Sorry, we
seating.
just started chatting
Yeah,
it
they
up.
said seat 4.
They said,
Hello, ladies. How
good
are
to
you?
see you.
Morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. If I can ask you to take your seats, thank you, Rochelle. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tanisha Leonard. I am the president of RTM 360. It is my pleasure to welcome you here this morning. So happy to see your faces here in outside in public. Thank you for continuing to be supporters of Pancakes and Politics. This morning, I'm just here to introduce you to our fearless leader, Mr. Hiram E. Jackson.
Good morning. Man, it's so good to see live bodies. Live. Anybody in their pajamas? Anybody forget to put their pants on this morning? I got all kind of notes here. I mean, it's weird being back here, so we gotta reacclimate ourselves. Normally the guests are back here and we go through the screen here. So all of us were kind of holding in our stomachs and walking through here because they didn't make enough room here. But it's all good. It's all good. We're gonna figure this out. I am super happy to be back at the Detroit Athletic Club. We've been here for 16 years. Isn't that amazing? Can we give a round of applause? 16 years, and for those of you who don't know, the first Pancakes and Politics we had was with Kwame Kilpatrick and L. Brooks Patterson. And wow, 16 years ago, that just seems like yesterday, but it was fireworks, and we haven't stopped since. But last March of 2020, we were able to have our first Pancakes and Politics, and obviously things shut down. And we attempted to have our second Pancakes and Politics in our office and do it virtually. And it sounded like a good idea at the time. And we worked on it, but just like everybody else, we were trying to figure it out. And we got through it, but it just didn't go well at all. And I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. And then one afternoon, Dennis called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And I said, "I'm in a meeting." He said, "Get your ass over here. I found a studio, and we need to be here." And so we went over to the AVL Creative Studios. They're producing this for us today. Give them a round of applause. And I fell in love, and we've been doing these virtually out of the AVL Creative Studios on the East Side, and they've been amazing partners. And once again, Dennis Archer Jr. saved my life. I never hear the end of this, but I wanted to give him his kudos for helping us out. I want to thank the Real Times Media staff and the Michigan Chronicle staff. They've been extraordinary over these last several months. We've done probably 50 virtual events for all of our properties around the country. We've essentially reinvented ourselves by building a studio, hosting town hall meetings, everything that you can imagine we've been able to do virtually. And by the grace of God, our sponsors have not left us, not one, and we appreciate you. We really do appreciate it. I want to thank I really want to thank all of the sponsors that participate in this particular event because over the last 16 years, we haven't had much movement with our sponsors at all. And it really, you can ask any company that does special events, any nonprofit that does special events. Obviously, sponsorships are the lifeblood of the event, the organization. To the extent that the sponsors or your partners support you, it allows you to have a very quality program, quality programming. And for the last 16 years, we have not had one of these that was not sold out. So I usually take a moment just to thank them. Rocket Companies, PNC Bank, Signal, DTE Energy, Walker Miller Energy Services, Henry Ford Health System, HAP, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Comcast, Bank of America, UHY Advisors, Ascension, Flagstar, AAA, and I want to thank our contributing sponsors, Honigman, Chase, WC, 3D, Truscott Rossman, Lambert, Remington, Wayne State, Mishta, and GAA. Did I get everybody? Did I get everybody? All right, thank you, I appreciate that. You can watch all of the past Pancakes and Politics on Facebook Live, on the Michigan Chronicle Facebook Live page. We've had a heck of a year. Obviously, Governor Whitmer, Mayor Mike Duggan, we had a great panel discussing how to reinvent Detroit. We've had our CEO roundtable. Just in the last couple of weeks, we had CEO of DTE, Jerry Norcia, and Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors. All of these interviews are on Facebook Live. Okay, now I'd like to bring up the market president for PNC Bank, Rick DeVore. Rick has been a soldier for us, as you know, for the last 7 years. And PNC Bank has been a great friend, a great partner, and they've been our presenting sponsor for the last 7 years. So please join me in welcoming Rick DeVore.
Good morning, and my mom taught me never to keep women waiting, and so I don't want to keep this esteemed group too long. But with that said, by the way, these are my COVID glasses that my wife thought I would look better in, but I'm not sure if I do or not, but she's right. So today's her birthday, so she's really right. But today's topic, Women Who Read, is a terrific opportunity to get insight from 4 exceptional leaders. Anyone that is in business knows that women are a powerful force in the marketplace. And just to give you some statistics, there's 13 million firms owned by women, generating $1.85 trillion in sales in 2019. Women-owned businesses are the fastest growing segment in the economy. And by the way, here's a statistic that I'm happy to see. The number of wealthy women in the country is growing faster than that of men. At PNC, we were recently named one of the nation's top 50 companies for executive women. 33% of our Thank you. 33% of our board is women, and we have a number of women that report to our chairman, Bill Demchak, running lines of business, such as, in addition to our marketing, retail banking, our corporate, institutional, and trust wealth management business, as well as our commercial line of business. I, myself, over half of my direct staff are women, and this is because over 50% of our managers are indeed women. So I just wanted to point out our commitment to this. Kind of a shameless plug here, please forgive me ahead of time, but along with Trina Scott from Rock Ventures, I'm going to be honorary co-chair of Oakland University's Keeper of the Dream project on January 17th. This is the 30th anniversary, and I just want to make sure that people are aware that if you want to attend, Trina and I can help you out in a big way. And oh, by the way, as is our tradition with Pancakes, Hiram and I cut our deal. We're done. So I'm here to announce that PNC Bank in 2022 will be, again, the presenting sponsor of Pancakes and Politics. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chad Howard, President and Chief Operating Officer of Signal Restoration Services. Signal Restoration and our co-CEOs, Frank Torrey and Mark Davis, are honored to be sponsors of Michigan Chronicles, Pancakes, and Politics. Thank you to everybody who is joining us today. Signal is a property restoration contractor specializing in remediation, disaster cleanup, environmental services, and reconstruction of commercial properties. We remediate damage from natural disasters, fire, water, wind, as well as provide cleaning and sanitation services for facilities all across the country. With over 350 locations throughout North America, Signal Restoration is a one-stop shop disaster recovery contractor. Whether a small leak or a large-scale, multi-million-dollar restoration project, our mission at Signal is to provide relentless customer service whenever and wherever disaster strikes. As a Michigan-based company, we are pleased to support Pancakes and Politics, an event that provides a platform to better our Detroit community, as well as the state of Michigan. Signal is proud to be a sponsor of an event that allows the ideas of diverse groups of leaders and community members to be expressed and, most importantly, put into action. On behalf of Signal Restoration, thank you again, and we hope you enjoy the event.
Okay, I want to bring up our moderator and our host for the entire season. A few years ago, when we were up at Mackinac, I saw Dennis Archer Jr. interview Dan Gilbert, and it was kind of a fireside chat. And after that, I had never thought of Dennis as, a journalist or anything like that. We've been friends forever. But I appreciated the conversation structure of the interview. It wasn't, he wasn't grilling Dan, he was having a conversation. And because of that style, I felt that the interviewees were opening up more and you would learn more about the people who were on our panels. And so we started using Dennis, and I think you will agree he's been an amazing partner in this. And we call each other at midnight thinking of guests, thinking of ways to promote the guests. And I just want to bring him up, but I wanted to introduce him. He's usually introducing me. I wanted to introduce him because he's been a great partner this season. So please join me in bringing up the CEO of Ignition Media, Dennis Archer Jr.
I appreciate Hiram's comments. It's him calling me at midnight, by the way, not me calling him. Good morning, all. It is phenomenal to be back. The room is not as full as it typically is. I think we've cut the attendance maybe by half or so, but it is amazing to be back at the DAC. The one thing I did not miss is the dress code, but I will become accustomed to wearing a full suit again, obviously out of necessity. And Hiram, as it related to the first Pancakes and Politics with Brooks and the mayor, we can't bring Brooks back, but we definitely try to get Kwame back up here. I don't know if any of you all saw Kwame preach a couple weeks ago. The boy is good. We have just an amazing panel and subject matter this morning. I think a lot of you know that I entertain, so it is not unlikely that I would be sitting, at a table at one of my events or something with a handful of women, but I was intimidated getting dressed this morning because these are some bad sisters coming up here right now. So let me, with no further ado, introduce our panel. Malenka Clark is the president and CEO of the Hudson Weber Foundation. Malenka, please join us. Heather Geisler. Heather is the Executive VP and Chief Marketing Communications and Experience Officer for Henry Ford Health System. Dr. Tracy Joshua is the Vice President of External Supply Chain at the Kellogg Company, Tracy.
Thank you.
And Carrie Duggan is the CEO of Sustainability. Carrie? Let me just make a couple of opening comments, and then I'm going to better introduce each of you and ask you a question each before we open it up to the broader discussion. Last night, I was having drinks with Palencia Mobley and Sonia Mays, and as I sat there listening to how smart they were, I just came to the realization of just how many dynamic, bright, smart, driven women we have in the metropolitan Detroit area. I mean, these are four among them, but there are plenty of people in the crowd, Carla, Tammy, that could be up here. And so, Council President, good morning. The second thing that I will say is, we have to be able to strike a balance. I mean, if you look at right now, there's a lot of attention being paid to the African American experience, how we experienced COVID disproportionately, the emphasis or extreme attention paid to police interaction as a result of the activities of last summer. But we tend to shift our focus from one thing to another, and in my opinion have not done a wonderful job at being focused on all at once. And a prime example of where I illustrated a flaw in that regard, in 2016, I was chairman of the Mackinac Policy Conference, and I was going to ensure that there's more black folks that ever attended the conference, more black folks on the stage, more black content. That happened. However, well, hold on for the applause, because what happened on day 2 of the conference is that, I don't know if it was the news or Free Press, Tammy, you may remember, but there was a rather notable article that was basically like, where are all the women? So I had been personally focused so much on ensuring that black folks were participating that admittingly, it never came out of my mouth, but we also have to make sure women are present as well. So a message to everybody is we have to be balanced. We can't focus on one or the other. We have to be balanced collectively to help all those who have been disadvantaged, left out, miss out on opportunities, aren't able to be in the room or at the table. I'm reminded by that now a lot because Tiffany, who works for me, is like one little person in one ear saying, don't forget the brothers, don't forget the brothers. And then Angela, who now works for me, is like pounds me constantly about women. So I think I'm reaching that balance. But we all have a responsibility. But Malenka, we're so glad to have you here in Detroit as CEO and president of the Hudson Weber Foundation. Prior to that, you've served in the Obama administration, worked in the Department of Justice. You had an amazing legal career, including a federal clerkship. You've worked on the Biden transition. You got a law degree from Harvard and an undergraduate degree from Brown. My son, I may call you for a recommendation. My son, they want to go to Harvard. But you've got a tremendous background. It's varied experientially. You obviously had exposure to the arts growing up. Why philanthropy?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I feel like for my career, the common through line and the privilege of what I've been able to do is to be able to kind of look up in the world, see, figure out not just the passion side, but like what's the solution side. And certainly I went to law school inspired by Brown v. Board. One of my first jobs out of law school was at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. But as I think about the cases that I got to work on, starting around economic justice, then, and literally like it's such a span, but moved through many different spaces. But the Guantanamo detainees, I was horrified by what happened, was able to participate in my career through a lawsuit against the government I ended up working for, and the foreclosure crisis happened. I got to work on issues related to that, and really sort of the through line. So I'm no longer practicing law, but I feel like the consistent thread is I'm in a place where I can support leaders that are addressing the issues that are going to move our community forward here in Detroit. The policy piece is also a through line, and certainly at my tenure at Hudson Weber, we've lifted up the policy work that we've been doing. So why philanthropy? It's a place of action, and I feel like that it has been. And I smile because as a lawyer, when I first got here and was learning about some of the issues, I literally was like, who can we sue? And yes, there is space and room for that. But it's nice, actually, to continue to work on the issues that I care about, but to have a bunch of different tools.
Oh, thank you. So, Heather, prior to this position, you've had some amazing roles with global brands, MSNBC, Hyatt Hotels, noted as one of the 30 most influential women in global hospitality. You've worked in the agency space, and now you are with us here in Detroit with Wright and Company at Henry Ford Health System. What attracted you to this market? Why Detroit? Why Henry Ford?
Yeah, it's a great question. COVID was an interesting inflection point for a lot of people in a lot of ways. And certainly when you think about industries that were impacted by COVID, hospitality and healthcare probably come to mind at the top of the list. And when I was approached about the opportunity to come to Detroit, there was a lot of things that attracted me. I mean, one thing that's been a consistent through line in my career has been working for organizations for whom purpose and mission is really critically important. And I will be very candid, it took one conversation with Wright Lassiter to help me realize that purpose and mission were critically important at Henry Ford. And that there was a really powerful, transformative mission that was happening and emerging in healthcare that I really wanted to be a part of. And that is a larger mission than just serving the patients in your hospital. It's about how healthcare can be a transformative force for change within the communities you serve. And that was articulated so clearly in the vision that Wright shared for Henry Ford. It was proved out by 105 years of history at Henry Ford in Detroit and the commitment to this city. And it just felt like, in many ways, this culmination of so many interesting things that I'd done across my career, but an opportunity to really work not only in an organization that's looking to make change here, but potentially being transformative for the industry as a whole. And that was too big of an opportunity to say no to.
Well, we're glad you said yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Tracy, you manage a close to $3.5 billion budget, 40 external manufacturing partners for Kellogg around the country. Big job. Prior to that, you were in the procurement organization, and you've got background varied to include automotive here in Detroit, as well as being head of procurement for DPS. And along the way, you find time to be very involved in the MMSDC and other boards. Interesting question for you, though. In Detroit, we are used to black success. We are used to seeing black folks in leadership positions, and you occupied many of those positions while here. But then you went a couple hours west to Battle Creek, where they may not used to be seeing black folks, let alone a sister who's strong-willed, in charge. So how has your experience been different given the geography and the associated mindsets that might be in that geography?
Yeah, very provocative question, and thanks for
That's what we do here.
First, let me say, I am a proud product of Detroit. I love this city. I am back and forth all the time. I got to give a plug. I grew up in Detroit, not in the suburb. I grew up in Detroit, 23rd and McGraw to be exact, where the old Olympia Stadium used to be Northwestern High School, although I went to Cass Tech. And my family has always been committed to the city. Being on the west side, yes, it is different. I come back and forth to home a lot. But being on the west side of the state, our company is really focused on feeding America, making sure that everyone is fulfilled. And that mission resonates with me. My background, my family background is, my folks always told me, use your leadership, your talents to give back to the community and make it a greater place. Leave this place better than you found it. And so that has been really my drive. I've been with organizations that are really about helping people, whether it's mobility, grew up in automotive, went to pharmaceutical, where, really focus on addressing diseases and helping people to heal and be well. I was proud and honored to be tapped to be on the Detroit turnaround team, where when the city was in bankruptcy, the schools were really challenged, and now on the west side of the state. It can be challenging to be the only one in the room, but my mantra is I may be the first and I may be the only, but I won't be the last. And so I really focus on bringing others along. And I challenge you as well and challenge all of us. If you're in the room, you need to bring at least 5 people. At least 5 people. Because I want to be able to look to the right, to the left, up and down the organization. And it's about the collective. And that's how we move things forward. The other thing I'll say in terms of MMSDC, really focused on growing our diverse spin and helping grow our diverse businesses.
Yeah, thank you. And Carrie, I mean, I know firsthand about you being a dynamic mom because we get invited to the birthday parties. But similar to Malenka, a significant amount of time in government, cross administrations, work in transition with Biden. But all along that way, you've always had a focus on the environment. And it's been evident when you look at your resume. It's talking about sustainability, ESG, the environment. And it's interesting because, ESG is now a buzzword. And it reminds me of how supplier diversity started as really the right thing to do. And now those who are smart understand that it is a business imperative and a competitive advantage, not just supplier diversity, but diversity in workforce, on your boards, because of the diversity in thought that's brought to the table, et cetera. Talk to us about why we should be concerned now. I know for us at Archer Corporate Services, we have to report to our large corporate clients now on our sustainability efforts. But talk about how this is already a business imperative and a differentiator.
Awesome. Thanks for having me and for Hiram for asking me to join this morning. Absolutely, ESG is certainly a buzzword, but if you're not familiar, it's environmental social governance, and that all eyes are on this space right now. For me, I think, I say this in a lot of my speeches, we're in an age of transparency and scrutiny. And bless the millennials and the folks on Twitter, but it's probably not going away anytime soon. So I would just encourage those of you in business and philanthropy and everywhere else to be paying close attention, as Dennis said, to your supply chain. I know that I'm looking directly at Carla Walker-Miller. I know that's something that is a priority for her firm. I have had the good fortune, Dennis, of working at this city, state, local, national, and global level, and I continue to do that with a through line for me always being Detroit. Detroit has always made me a better policy person and better business person and so on. And one of my existing clients right now is a global investment firm called Rock Creek. And Afsane Beschloss, you guys might know her husband Michael, famous presidential historian. Afsane's famous in her own right. She was the former treasurer of the World Bank. She's been doing ESG and DEI investing far before it was fashionable. And the returns are there, folks. So if I had to leave you with anything, having those diverse and female voices at your table, the returns will show. And it's been, you can Google it, you can find out that I'm not making that up. The other thing I'll say is
we trust you.
I try to be trustworthy. Another thing that's interesting, Dennis, is just in the last few months, I've become a member of a publicly traded corporate board. So I'm now part of the only 10% of women on publicly traded corporate boards. So we have a lot of work to do. Yes, so if I leave you with anything, it's pay attention to the fact that this is all going to be increasingly more transparent. The reporting of that Dennis is talking about, I think there's just going to be increased scrutiny. So now's the time if you're not engaged in that, and I think if you look around, you're going to find a lot of people eager to help you achieve these goals and push your own goals up in that space.
Thank you. I went Tuesday, a colleague and I went to Grand Rapids for the Grand Rapids Chamber, had a day of events and speakers similar to what we do at the Detroit Policy Conference. One of the speakers gave some very disturbing information from my standpoint. I'd love for you guys to react to it. He said that in September, this past September, which is around the time kids go back to school, 865,000 working women left the workforce. And that is a rate 4 times that of men exiting the workforce. And then again in January, 275,000 women left the workforce compared to 71,000 men. And so the conclusion that I drew, because he left it open and he asked the audience to think about it as well, is that kids are going back to school, and when a decision has to be made, it's the woman that's going to stay home with the kids. React to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, McKinsey did a study as well showing that not only women, but Black women in particular are opting out. During this pandemic, women are just exhausted, right?
Y'all can clap.
Many families live in multi-generational homes, so the woman is taking care of not only the children, but also parents. In many cases, women are in the stage of life where, parents are getting older, needing more care. And then, of course, you instantly went from being a career woman to being a teacher and the other roles that women have. So quite honestly, women are exhausted. We need, and I always like to say too, this is not us versus them, or one person succeeds and nobody else can. This is about balance and the collective. So, how do we address this problem, as a human race versus us versus them? Because we need men. We need men to be our champions, our advocates. We need men, and shout out to P&G, they didn't pay me to say this, but if you've looked at their ads, how they're really focused on diversity and inclusion and sharing the load. It can't just be, the woman is responsible for everything. So, any other thoughts?
I would certainly second everything that you're saying, and I would just say that, the pandemic, as we well know, exposed fault lines around race, and it has, just the data that you're showing, has exposed those same fault lines around gender. And we need allies, but we also need structural reform to our economy. So we don't have, there are so many things. Women are in low-wage jobs. They're more likely to be in jobs that don't have benefits. They're more likely to be in temporary jobs. So when something like the pandemic hit, not only are women pulling out of the workforce because they have children to care for, which is a huge thing. And by the way, we also don't have paid family leave. We don't have a host of protections that most other countries that have, strong economies and democracies and the like provide. I actually, I was in DC when I was pregnant, and DC is, lots of international people, so my mom's group was very international, and my jaw was dropping about, they were sort of complaining what they were missing out on if they were back home in wherever, whatever country, with a year off, and men get it too, and all of those things. But also just on the economy piece, women are also disproportionately in hospitality, in retail, in all of those spaces and places. And I hope if we learn anything, that we come out of it with real intentionality around interventions that are cognizant. That's what equity means, right? Focusing the interventions so we don't have a divided economy where women are so disproportionately affected by something like the pandemic.
Thank you.
That's good.
I'll just say, leadership matters. So certainly what Mark was talking about in terms of policy, I know that this is a pretty astute crowd when it comes to policy and decision making, but whom you elect matters, and y'all know who a former boss was. And so I'm really pleased to see equity and these conversations really centered in that policy. But I'll also say to you, I'm often accused of being very real when I give public talks. So one thing I wanted to share with you, I'm going to do some writing about this, but the experience of going through the process of getting on a corporate board, I'm going to park that here, but tell you about the night before I had to get my documents in. I had a timeline. I have young kids, as Dennis knows, and a busy executive husband, so it got a lot going on at any moment. But I needed a notary at about 10 p.m., Dennis, in Detroit. And I live on the east side. And so I hit the Nextdoor app and everything else. I found a young lady who was a mobile notary, but she was at home with her kid and couldn't come to me, so I drove to her. And this young woman, she moved me so much, because as I was sitting there just filling out my paperwork with her and so grateful that I found her in the middle of the night, I just started looking around at her workspace. She had a son right next to her doing his homework. So I got to know her a little bit and discover how hard it was for her just to run her small business, and this is one piece of her business, and she sells wares and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, surely you've heard of Detroit Means Business. Huh? So if I give you guys all a homework assignment, let's do the policy work, let's do what we're capable and what we have power to do, and we all understand our power, but look around you. We talk about supply chains, but I'm talking about the other human being, 5 blocks over, and try to take care of each other. And I think that's the thing that is so beautiful about Detroit. We are totally capable of doing that. Mm-hmm. So if you want to meet Miss April and you need a notary,
Heather, anything to add?
Well, I went right to where the other women on this panel did, is that I think one of the things that we saw is, and the unfortunate thing is a lot of women didn't opt out. They were forced out. Let's be honest. It's not a choice if you don't have the safety net to support you, right? And so I think that is something that, again, brings into stark reality a lot how fragile those social support networks are for so many women, and why it is absolutely critical that we don't go back to normal, right? I think that's the biggest challenge, and that's what frustrates me most when we talk about coming back to the pandemic, is people say, oh, we want to go back. And this is, the pandemic has illustrated structural problems that if we don't address them after what has happened, then shame on us. And the impact on women has absolutely exacerbated and shined a huge light on some of those challenges structurally within our communities, within our economic structures, that if we don't take decisive action to say we don't want this to happen again, we don't want women to find themselves in this not forced choice, then we really do need to do something about it.
Thank you. Switching topics a little bit. So we have ACS is a small business, 30 or so people. And so my partner and I fill different roles at different times. One is HR. So sometimes people will come to us with things, and I'm like, did that really happen? I'm not questioning it, but the offender, I can't even believe it. There have to have been times in your careers, multiple, but there have to be standout times where you all are like, did this shit really just happen? Rooted in, right. So, without, because I think it's instructive, because, one of the incidents most recently at ACS that I'm thinking about is if you were to go to the guy is like clueless that he even offended this woman, right? Wasn't intentional. He was just, acting how guys act, and that it's not appropriate. So, I mean, are there instances either that stand out, or, you guys have some straight talk advice to us as men in terms of how to appropriately support you and not be jerks, in the process, honestly?
How do you treat your mother?
Fair, right. She's watching too, so she could answer that.
I mean, I would say that the reason why the Me Too movement accelerated as quickly as it did is because every single woman in this room has a story, right? And, I was just shocked when, women started changing their status on social, and men in my peer group who I really support were like surprised. I think that, it goes back to this idea of if you're the only woman in the room, things that may otherwise just be a compliment stand out in glaring, stark relief. And if you're not surrounded by peer groups that feel representative of you, those things that feel insignificant take on a whole other level of significance. And I would say, I worked across my career in many male-dominated industries. I worked in beverage alcohol for a little bit. I worked in media, which is still very male-dominated in many senses in many aspects, especially at the top. And there have been plenty of times when I was the only woman in the room, and things that were said, where you sat in the room, the expectation of your role in the room. Have you ever noticed how women tend to be asked to take notes more than men, even if you're at the same level of other people in the room? Those things matter. But there's also a responsibility to, and I think we've all taken it, but there is a responsibility to speak up. And I think that that is something that I have tried to embrace, or have tried to make sure that other women in my team and my organization understand that there is a pathway for those conversations, because those conversations have to be addressed, and they have to, and feelings do matter. And intention sometimes gets less important than the harm that's felt. And I think that's important for people to keep in mind.
Yeah, impact, right? Your intention may be one thing, but how were you impacted? We all have a story. But one thing I'll say, if you see something, say something. Women, we gotta stop competing with each other. It's not about competition. It's about working together and collaborating. When I was on the Detroit turnaround team, and I always highlight this, I'll leave everybody nameless, but we had a Tuesday evening, just women, the C-level women, and we would go out and we would support each other, number one, but then also give each other feedback. In that meeting, you speak up more. Don't sit in the back of the room. You did great. I mean, because we don't always get that feedback. It was immediate. Every Tuesday, without fail, we met and we talked, and it was awesome. And that's what we've got to do more of in terms of support systems. Absolutely have to have a support system. Absolutely, if you see something, say something. And for God's sake, don't be competing with your fellow sister.
I think those type of networks are absolutely essential. And I guess I would just say they're essential in part because of the burden that we can carry, particularly when you're the only person in the room. And I know, as a Black woman in particular, what I would ask, I guess, those other people in the room to recognize is the feeling, and I think just based on comments I have heard throughout my career, the feeling that if you, not having the room to fail, because if you fail, folks will be like, oh yeah, we had a Black woman. That didn't work out, which is like, first of all, like, not to say, like, we are talented and excellent, and so here we are. But the truth is, that would never happen, right? If a white man, nobody would ever say, we're not gonna try again. And I have literally have heard implicitly stories around that, which are just like drive me crazy. So I would definitely put that on the table, because I don't think that most of the work that needs to be done, it needs to be done by women.
Agree. Anything to add?
How would you treat your mom, Dennis? That's
Phenomenally. And I teach my boys the
There's
same.
your answer.
You know. I'm joined by Sherry Colade from the Michigan Chronicle, who's going to take questions from the audience.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for the panelists for your amazing answers. I'm going to go around with a couple questions, but I will start with my own first. And if you could keep your answers brief, that would be amazing. Thank you. Malanka, can you talk about what would you tell Black women and young girls coming behind you about what it takes to be an effective leader?
I would say that the best approach is to be yourself. And I literally was on the stage saying these words several years ago. But I think for me, my leadership style is collaborative, and I feel like I have had moments where I want to be mindful. I'm a nice person, like that's who I am, and I have felt defensive about that in times as I've gone through the leadership ranks. I absolutely am able to not be nice when that's necessary, I will say. But in general, right, that's part of my superpower. People like me. I mean, I actually will just own that. And I felt like, you know, as a woman, I was feeling insecure about that. So I would tell women behind me, like, own your assets. Mm-hmm. Do not question, you know, those pieces. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say.
Thank you. And the next question is for you, Heather. What was the path you took to get to where you are today, and how can other women in the communication industry chart a similar one?
That's a great question. I think, you know, I've been very lucky to have always had strong women mentors throughout my career. And I know that that's not common, but I really have had some amazing women who I think taught me a couple of things. One is to lead with humility. And I think you can know yourself and be true to yourself and trust yourself and still lead, you know, your fellow women and your team from a place of empathy and humility, and that's something that's always been really critically important. And by the way, something I think women do exceptionally well. The other thing I would say is to know when to get out of the way, right? As a leader with other women coming up behind you, sometimes it's important to step aside and push other people forward. Especially in those rooms, right? Those 5 people that you bring to the room aren't baggage or luggage, right? They should be your stars. And I've always wanted to hire teams of women who I feel like if I wasn't in the room would be able to not only do what I could do, but would bring their own special sauce to that conversation or that presentation. So I think the most important thing for women, leading women and helping them move forward, is to know when to lead and to know when to push other people ahead of you.
Thank you. And Dr. Tracy, this question is for you. What does it take to lead with a position like yours with passion, impact, and strategy? And where do you hope to take the procurement side of the Kellogg Company in the future with a minority supplier standpoint?
Ooh.
That was a mouthful.
I got the first part, I didn't get the second.
Please take the first, and I'll go with the second later.
Okay. So, I remember when I started, you know, I wanted this blueprint. Okay, how do you do this? And I come to learn, and I was told that, and at the time, folks said, everybody's journey is different. They didn't use that terminology, but it's all different. I can't really tell you. And I thought, no, they're just not being open enough. But it's true. Everybody's journey is different. I actually studied supply chain. Michigan State, go green. And
you get a pass on that.
And a lot of people fall into supply chain, but I actually studied it at State and then Georgia Tech. And I love it. I'll never forget, bless his heart, Dr. John Moran. He's former chief procurement officer at what was then Chrysler. He was one of my professors. And he was doing value analysis and teardowns and understanding cost and negotiation and procurement, when it wasn't, sexy, I'll say. And I said, oh boy, people do this for a living? I mean, I know how to shop. I know how to get a good deal. I know how to negotiate, and I know how to collaborate. And so I fell in love with supply chain, and not just from a procurement standpoint, but end to end, if you will. Raw materials, then making it, then distributing it, and getting it to customers, and focused on, having what the customer wants. So that's a passion of mine. So one of the things I say when I talk to students, number one is do internships. So you get to know what it is that you really like. And then just go for it. There's really no blueprint. Everybody's career is different. And I've been blessed along my career to have folks that have supported me, that have pulled me aside and told me, hey, don't go left, go right. And both women and men. And so I think it's all about working together and really, I like the comment, pushing forward folks that you see have that, they're diamond in the rough. But if they just have encouragement and just have insight, they will get there.
Thank you. And where do you hope for the second part to take the procurement side of the Kellogg Company in the future from a minority supplier standpoint?
The future, we're always, number one, quality, service, innovation is the future. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, they have multiple customers. They're able to see across multiple landscapes, and they can innovate faster than larger corporations. So bringing that innovation, how do we do it better? How do we take it to the next level? That's really the future, and that's really what we look for in our all suppliers, but diverse suppliers, looking at it as a system, and then how do we take it to the next level?
Thank you for that. And this question is for you, Carrie. Can you talk about how this is a male-dominated field, the energy sector and environmental sector, and how you hope to change that?
Memories. My first day at the U.S. Department of Energy was 2010, and I will never forget walking into the cafeteria. And it was literally a sea of white men with pocket protectors and glasses. And I was just delighted to be there. It is obviously another male-dominated field, but one, I will say, I've made it, pretty high up, if you will. And I think my roots in Detroit and being very grounded in place for two things: gumption and humility. You talked about humility, and I do think that's an important part of leadership, but for women, it's gumption. It's stepping forward and stretching yourself and raising your hand and asking the question. And a lot of it is, what do you need? You look like you need help, Dennis. How can I help you? Mm-hmm. And it's something as simple as that. So as far as women coming up in this space, I mean, there's a lot of change happening in the energy sector right now. You've got a great energy leader in the room who's a key partner of mine. I just think everything these panelists have shared about bringing other folks on, I am very intentional. My team right now is all women, and I'm trying to lift them up and get out of their way. And I'm truly only where I'm for the mentors that I had. There is no blueprint, as you said. So, using that same bit of gumption that I've had through my career, creating opportunity. So, go blue. One of the things I'm doing for.
There we go.
I know I'm wearing the wrong color. One of the things I'm doing with the University of Michigan is helping them do more sustainability work in Detroit. And so there's some forthcoming news in the next couple of months about work we're doing to really bring the Ivory Tower into Detroit in a way that really supports entrepreneurs and sort of kitchen table issues for the city. So there's no blueprint. You've got to make it up, but you have to trust who you are. I think you've heard it on this panel this morning. I know what my assets are, and I'm deploying them in Detroit, and I'm bringing those global and national folks to this great place. So there is something magical about this place, and I'm really proud to be here. So.
You know, as we come close to closing, you were talking about the government, so this is really for you and Malenka. Is the path any different, easier? Would you suggest that women go into government service at some point as either a career booster, the value from the experience?
I mean, I think it does depend on what your end game is, but I certainly in the policy field as a lawyer now in philanthropy, you know, so much of sort of what I've come to bring to the table, I think, is informed by that important 6 years that I spent in government in several different roles. So I mean, as I say that, I'm like, I hardly could think of anything that you might want to do where it wouldn't be helpful, actually, as I think about it. Just because the perspective, you know, in many different ways, as a leader working in a large bureaucracy, understanding how things get done, how decisions get made, understanding, you know, the government is in every place and space, and how the, you know, how you interface on the other side is way better informed, obviously, having been sitting there.
Yeah, I would agree. The only thing I would add is that everybody should do a stint in public service, and I've been really blessed to have appointments, you know, city, state, and federal over time, and absolutely it's going to make you better on the outside, whether you're in philanthropy, nonprofit, business, or whatever, because you understand the system. But our democracy, as you know, we're all working towards a more perfect union, and there's some key fights going on I know everyone is paying attention to right now for our democracy. So getting involved in some fashion is something everybody in this room could do. You just have to, again, raise your hand and step up. But for all the young people that are watching, absolutely, do it now. I wish working in government was more sexy and appealing. So if we're a case study for that, you can come out the other side and do well in your career. But absolutely, it's so important.
Talk quickly about how, you know, a lot of people thought that both our governor and our mayor would potentially go to D.C. with now our president. And when you talk to Mayor Duggan about it, he talks about how many years, I think 50 years it's been since there's been a friendly, from his perspective, in the governor's role and the president. Talk about the importance of having an aligned president in the White House for the city of Detroit.
Oh, and you mean the president loves Detroit.
Right.
So that helps. I can't even tell you. I've got countless stories of just how much he loves this place and really feels like he understands it. So that alone is a huge benefit for us. But that alignment is important because, as you know, all politics is local and it's relationships. I'm looking at you, council member. These relationships matter because you can fast track the conversations around, you know, sticky hard issues or, you know, policy that needs to get done because you trust the other person. The president certainly has trust in the governor and in the mayor to get work done. And I think to take it one step further, we're at a critical moment. We all know the AJP needs to get through. We have critical aged infrastructure across all infrastructure in this country. So if you're not doing your part to get out and advocate for that, please do. And the reason I bring it up here in Michigan is that Michigan is really, you know, where a lot of the critical infrastructure started. You know, think of the transportation, the highways, and so on. We have this once-in-a-lifetime generational opportunity to overhaul into 21st century climate-resilient infrastructure. So that alignment could not be more critical at this moment, and the window is not very long. So, yeah, it's absolutely important for Detroit, for the state of Michigan, and then so for Michigan to lead the country. That's really my end game. Is this is not flyover territory, and a lot of folks in Washington, not the president, think that.
Yeah, thank you. So as we close, I'd love to give each of you an opportunity. I mean, the title of the panel is Women Who Lead. And for those that didn't know you or were not familiar with any of you prior to this hour we spent together, it is clear why each of you are up here. And so, with that, I'd offer you each opportunity to provide a closing remark for the audience and those watching on Facebook Live. We can start with you, Carrie.
Okay, Dennis. No pressure. Well, I think you heard a lot of common themes between us as women, I think. I'll just leave you with this. I'm often asked that question about how did you get where you are to work for the president and the other former president, and sorry, President Obama, not the other former president. And the answer really for me was having strong female mentors. I mentioned to some of my colleagues up here this morning that back when I was a student at Detroit Country Day School, I read Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, and that changed my whole worldview. But she was dead 10 years before I was born. So she wasn't a live mentor. So it took me some time to find the live female mentors in my life. And one of them ended up being Lana Pollock, who's the first female state senator in Michigan. There's no women's bathrooms when she started her career in Lansing. So, if you aren't already mentoring a young lady, I would suggest that you look around you, because they're looking for you, and help bring them along and bring them into that room, be one of your 5 people. Thank you for having me.
I was going to say the same thing. One of my favorite quotes is, behind every successful woman is a tribe of women who have her back. And I love my tribe. My tribe is big, and it's diverse, and it's spread all over my career and my personal life. And hold your tribe close, right? Because I can count on more than one occasion, the reason I was in a room, or the reason I got an interview, or the reason I got a job is because a woman that I worked with back there made a phone call to another woman that knows somebody who works there, and said, you got to talk to this woman. And build your tribe, right? Tribes are not finite. The other thing I would say, another favorite analogy that I love is that people have circles, but when you think about your tribe, it should be a horseshoe. Right? There should always be an opening in your tribe where you're welcoming and you're letting other women into that group, because it'll make it stronger. So I would say never forget your tribe and embrace horseshoes, not circles. And what we'll find is that we're moving forward together.
I love that, and I'm going to carry on the theme, but only say that if we just rely on women, we will not get to the end game. And certainly, as I've gone through my career, if there hadn't been men also looking out for me, positioning me, I wouldn't be where I am. And so the responsibility is on all of us. I just want to underscore that.
And I just tag on to that. I stand on the shoulder of giants, and those giants are both men and women. My folks are the biggest giants to me. And so I really employ us to bring others along. I have that 5 rule. And then also I'll leave you with, it's not about me, it's not about you. It is about us collectively, and that's the end game, really. We all, leave this place at one point or another. And so how do we leave this place better than we found it? And that is not whether you're in philanthropy, whether you're in corporate America, whether you own your own business. How do we make this place better?
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I would just say, as I close out, if I could speak to the men in the room, Tanya Allen, who most assuredly would be worthy to be up here, where she's still with us here in Detroit, said actually at a Pancakes and Politics, and I wrote it down, that when you talk about DEI, to her, the D and the I are deliberate and intentional. And this is not going to happen because we fell asleep thinking about it, or we nodded our head watching the news, or you leave here and you're saying, well, this is a dope panel, they're really smart, if you don't do anything as a result of the message. it's been commented to me that, hey, you and Frank and your guys, your friends, you all do business together, and there's never any women involved. And my retort initially was, yeah, but we're all friends and we all have history and we trust each other and we know each other. But that answer is exactly why there's disproportionate opportunity for women today. So unless Frank, Chris, myself, Hiram, go out of our way to say, you know what, we're going to ensure that there's a woman on this cap table. We're going to make sure there's a woman in this fundraising meeting with this important public official. That's our responsibility. So I would challenge each of the men in the room to be more aware and more deliberate and intentional about including women. And with that, thank you all for being here today. Appreciate it. Oh, and we're going to, sponsors, if you want to stick around for some photos, please.